Judging by its press coverage so far, you might think that the big military review of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy that was released this week ahead of tomorrow's hearings on the matter, you might think that that report was a survey, a referendum of members of the military about what they think about repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell, whether they think the policy ought to be repealed. It explicitly was not that. The report says explicitly, quote, "It is not the Department of Defense's practice to make military policy decisions by a referendum of service members." That makes sense. You don't do a referendum on people's rights in America. That's the whole idea of rights. You also don't do a referendum on how the military should be run. That is not how the Defense Department does things. However, one of the more fascinating and surprising things in the Pentagon's review is the level of detail the report goes into about the experience, the previous experience, of racially integrating our military. That experience as a precedent for ending Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Not only arguing that civil rights could be granted against much stronger headwinds than today's headwinds against gay rights, but arguing that the granting of those civil rights to members of our military 50, 60 years ago, that made our military stronger. Joining us now for the interview is Clifford Alexander, the first African-American man to serve as Secretary of the Army. He is a proponent of repealing the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. Mr. Secretary, welcome back to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rachel, for having me.
What do you think about the analogy between then and now, between the process of racial integration in the late 40s and the 50s and repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell today?
Well, it is somewhat flawed, but it kind of misses the point of the fact that saying to gay people that they should lie when they come in the service and stay undercover, and if they don't stay undercover, we're going to kick you out, is anti-American, antithetical to any ethical standard. But I also would quarrel with the historical context of 1946 being the beginning. My wife, Adele Alexander, is a historian. She wrote a book called Homelands and Waterways, where her great-grandfather came from Ireland during the Civil War, joined the Union Navy, a black man, served with white sailors during that time, and was severely wounded. Now, there have been periods where the Navy would not admit any black people, and the Navy has a very different attitude and, frankly, history than the Army does. When I was Secretary of the Army, for example, I made 30 black people general officers. The Marines during that entire period of time had one officer who was general officer who was black. So it is uneven within the services. It is uneven historically, and the Truman example is an excellent example of something that did take place, but not analogous completely by any stretch of the imagination to the issue of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. One reason, for example, if a black man or woman decided to join the service, and you did it the way they're doing now with gay people, you would say, how in the world are they going to pass? They couldn't quite be black and pretend to be white. It doesn't quite work that way. So I think what we have to analyze is, A, the basic inequity of all that we're doing. B, the somewhat condescension of studying this issue to death. C, whether in America, in this year of 2010, with a president who supports it, with the service people who support it, with the American public that supports it, and any person who is really ethically sound supports it, should say, look, this has now reached the point of absurdity. Let us go ahead and do what we ought to do in an American society, and let us see to it that right away, there doesn't need to be a heck of a lot of planning. We say in the services that people who are gay serve like people who aren't gay. What I said when I was Secretary of the Army, when it related to women in the service, and we had some issues there, I said women in the Army are soldiers in the Army. Gay people in the Army are gay people in the Army. They are soldiers. That's what they are. That's what they do. They do, according to their MOS, their military occupational specialty, what they are assigned to do. Now, again, you know, these senators can get up and pontificate day after day, as they often do, about, oh, this is going to be such a problem. All they are exposing are their biases, nothing else. They're not exposing or helping the service by any stretch of the imagination. And if the general officers who come up there to represent the services should state their own point of view, they ought to say from whence it came. Why why would any head of the Marine Corps, for example, get before us and say a gay person can't serve as well as a person who is straight? It doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. We shouldn't be asking people about their sexual orientation. We should be asking people about their skills. We should not be asking young men and women as they come into the service whether, in fact, they are worried about sitting next to somebody or worried about being with someone else. We don't ask it about whether they want to do push-ups or not either. So it is now, it's well beyond the time that it should have been changed. And our president has stated, sometime unfortunately with muted voice, publicly, enough about the nonsense of keeping this up. Let the Congress act. And the Congress should act. I mean, the Congress should act on a lot of issues. But this is a particular issue of moral importance to this country. And those who oppose it should be underlined for what they stand for, which is antithetical, again, to American traditions of morality, to democratic traditions, to having a service that is strong, that includes people who have the skills. And, at this day and time that we're even talking about this, as we have to, and having a whole group of people, because of their political party, being against this makes absolutely no sense. But I do think the only way to address it is to address it straight on and to call those who oppose it what they are, which are people who are in many ways hurting, I think, our readiness.
Clifford Alexander, former Secretary of the Army. I have had the privilege to talk with you about this, I think 3 times now about this show, and each time I have been bowled over by your insight, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.